You know and live too much of the frustration of poor contact from tops to blades to shanks and fats. The secret sauce to making precise contact and eliminate any of these errors is a concept called arc control, which essentially describes an ability that all golfers must have, which is to move the club head on an arc in the backswing and downswing such that the club head sweet spot is returned precisely to the back center of the golf ball. Too high and we have thins and tops, too low and we have chunks, too far from us and we have us a shank, and too close to us and we have toes. So the objective of this video is to give you one tactic to solve each of these types of contact errors. Let's kick it off with the most disastrous of round wreckers, the shank. So as mentioned, if we're dealing with a shank or its cousin, the heel contact, we're dealing with a primary arc control issue that falls in the bucket of an arc distance issue. So a visual to explain what it is that I'm talking about is the hula hoop. If we can think of the hula hoop as the arc that the club head travels on around your body. So club head's orbiting around my body, and we're trying to control the arc that the club head travels on. What is an arc distance issue? So if I set up a certain distance away from this golf ball, then I basically preset the distance that I'm looking to return my arc back to the ball. So an arc distance issue that then would result in some level of heel contact would be when the arc, for whatever reason, travels too far away from us. Right, so we're trying to return the center of the club back to the center back of the ball, traveling through this, let's say, straight line target channel out to my target out there, but for some reason our arc has traveled too far away. Now there are a multitude of reasons why that might happen, and we're not here to try and identify the specific reason for you, because the genius of this is if we give ourselves a drill to perform, or a combination of drills to perform, we're likely to solve the primary causal factor without even having an understanding as to the causal factor for our heel contact, or even worse, the shank contact. So if we just have that basic understanding that the arc's traveling too far away from us, it can be as a result of body shift, which we will address a drill. It can be as a result of arm extension. It could even principally be as a result of you're just standing too close to the golf ball, therefore not enabling yourself enough space. We stand into a shot and have one fist distance between the top of your legs and the bottom of the handle, then that's enough space through which or for which that club arc can travel back down without migrating or landing further away from us, that arc distance issue. So then we want to go to a couple of drills that would solve the variety of heel or shank that would stem from either body movement towards the golf ball or overextension of our arms. So the first one we'll address is the overextension of our arms, and it's a drill called jump the fence. So what do we know about that shank? Arc distance travels too far away from us and we return the center of the club also further from us relative to where that golf ball is sitting and relative to where our feet are. So what we want to do is we want to have that experience of doing the exact opposite. So I'm going to treat this outside alignment stick as if it is the target line. I'm going to start with my club beyond it, so on the opposite side from which I'm standing. I'm going to start to make small swings, and I'm going to return my club back on the side of the stick that's closer to me. So I'm now actually migrating the arc closer to me versus further away. So I'm learning to move the center of the club closer to me progressively in bigger and bigger swings, bigger and bigger swings. And that's doing two things. The two effects that the jump the fence drill, starting far, landing closer, is it's causing me to have an awareness of returning that handle and therefore the club head closer to me. In addition, if there's any contributing factor for your body moving towards the golf ball, that will also be softened or eliminated through doing this same exercise. So you've jumped the fence 3 or 4 times in a practice swing, and now you put it into a live fire rep. So we can start on the outside. So you'll address the ball as you normally would. There's my one fist. You start on the outside, and now your brain has to connect with, I have to return that club closer to me by 1, 2, 3, possibly even 4 inches of distance. And that would be an aggressive distance, jumping the fence or moving the arc back towards you. But if your problem is a shank, then I would highly recommend that you exaggerate the emphasis or that change to create more of the effect. So jump the fence is drill number 1 to cure the shank / heel round wrecker, let's go to a secondary solution when that arc distance is moving far away from you. It's a drill that we can call tip the tower. Now sometimes I would use a club box standing behind me, and I would sit it up perpendicular or vertical on its end, and I would weigh it down with 4 or 5 golf balls so it doesn't blow over, but the wind's a little too strong today. So I'm going to use my golf bag. I'm going to set it directly behind my tail such that when I'm at address, I can feel the heads of my club sitting directly behind me, just like so. It'll take some positioning, but once you have it in position here, then the objective becomes, when you're in transition, I want you to push the clubs away. That will be tipping the tower. That club box sitting behind you, vertical, that's our tower. We want to push it away. It provides space to bring the handle back through and counters your tendency, if it exists, to shift out towards the golf ball. So the tip the tower in live fire goes a little bit like so. One rehearsal, tipping it over, swinging the handle down, just like so. And since I don't have a heel or a shank problem, when I'm doing these things, I'm actually migrating or moving the contact from the center of the face into the toe. So I'm getting the same effect that you're going to have if you're solving for heels or shanks, which is a testament to the success of these exercises. I'm really not too much thinking about what I'm doing with my body. I'm just responding to that skill athletically. So that's how we're going to solve those heels and those shanks. So what if we have the opposite problem? We still have an arc distance issue, but this time that arc distance issue is, no, I return the arc too close to me, right? Let me demonstrate that one again. And we're solving this time for toe contact. The effect of toe contact is it spins the face open when you're striking it off the toe with a club with bulge or roll, so that would be a driver, or a 3-wood, or a hybrid. It can create a lot of gear effect, hooking the ball, or converse of that is it twists the face open so much it sends it out to the right for a right-handed player. So that's, I've got my arc set up, and then I draw the arc back closer to me, whether it be through arms or my body receding. So the two exercises are, one of them being the same. This time it's jumping the fence the opposite direction. So we start with our club on the same side of the alignment rod as we're standing. We make small swings, stretching out. When I do this, I can feel my body shifting out over my toes. That would then counter any drift over your heels that would drag the arc closer to you. In addition, I feel the stretch in my arms. Most players would toe it because they don't have enough of these two things. The two things being stability in their body motion and extension with their arms back to impact. So one more full swing. There we go. And if I apply this same concept, this time I'm going to pop the ball on the opposite side of the stick, since we're jumping the fence further away from us rather than closest to us. If I apply this concept in abundance, I should get out all the way to that golf ball. I did. Whoops. And you can see what happened. I had to stretch so far with my arms, it pulled my body mass out towards me. I actually had to take a step forward. So that's clearly not what we want. But when we're doing the exercise, at least it's proof positive that it's having that effect both with our arms and our body that we're looking for. So that's going to help you solve the toe contact miss that becomes your round wrecker because it spins the face open or causes that thing to hook really hard over to the left. So your round wrecker is not a shank. It's not a heel and it's not a toe. We don't have an arc distance issue. What we have is we have either fats hitting the ground too early, or we have fins. Your arc is simply not getting to the ground. We throw those errors into the same bucket, even though they exist on two ends of that bucket or spectrum, and that's arc height issues. So if I go back to the hula hoop and explain, I'll explain using this as a reference for ground. So what we've got is we've got my virtual arc sitting on the ground. That's me at address, right? And what we're saying is that if my index finger here, my index finger and the thumb represent the back edge of the ball. What I'm saying is that when you're striking at fat, the bottom of your arc, or where your arc first touches the ground, more correctly stated, happens too early. So you can see back maybe 6 inches to my right, that arc touches the ground. That would be an extremely fat shot. That fat shot becomes a round wrecker because you essentially got to hit that same shot again, don't you? That ball might travel 30 or 40 yards when you're trying to cause it to travel some 100 to potentially 180 yards for your approach shot. So we have an arc height issue. We need to lift the arc, or at minimum, we need to move the arc further to the left to cause our club to bottom out or reach the ground at the back edge of the ball. So if that's fats, then thins is the exact opposite. We have an arc height that's too high. So something's causing that arc height to travel too far or too high relative to where the golf ball's sitting on the ground, and we can catch that golf ball a little thin, almost in the belly. There's another variety of thin contact where the arc moves so much to the left that the point through which the club's traveling is just too high relative to the ground coming on towards the golf ball, and you get to the ground very, very late. So 2 varieties of thin we've got to solve for: lifted arc or late arc, and 2 varieties of fat we've got to solve for. We're going to solve for deep arc, so that would be early arc, or deep arc. So those are 2 varieties of fat that we can solve for. And again, there's a variety or a multitude of factors that would contribute to the chance of, we'll deal with fat first, but there's a fairly simple strategy or strategies that we can package into a drill that are going to be your solution to the fat contact. So the first is called landing the plane. And what I would do in landing the plane is I would take a tee or an alignment rod. So I'll move this alignment rod out of the way now. I'm going to scratch a line in the ground. So there's a scratch line in the ground. I'm going to remove the golf ball at this point. Now that line becomes my objective. You can hear the plane flying overhead. That plane coming in to land needs to touch down on the runway. Well, that line is the beginning of the runway, and what happens when a plane touches down too early? Bad things happen, people die. We don't want bad things to happen in this case. We want to solve the round wrecker that is your fat contact. So we need to get really good at landing the plane exactly where it needs to be landed, or even slightly to the left. It would be totally okay for me to touch the ground half an inch to 3/4 of an inch to the left of where my runway starts. So I simply practice that, starting with small swings. This is a coordinative skill of being able to cause your club to do exactly what you're looking for it to do, expanding it out into big swings. Expanding it out into big swings, what you've just done is you've practiced the precision for landing your plane, not only in its location, but also in its height. Now, let's say you need a greater effect than the landing the plane exercise is having. You've scratched your line in the turf, you started hitting balls, but yet again, fat contact is happening. Another one to go to that's going to help you regulate the height of the arc is called a 3-tee drill, where we start with a tee that's super high, and then we work a tee that's then progressively down low, maybe half the height of the first one, and then finally a tee head that's touching the ground. It's sitting on the ground at the same surface as the base of the golf ball. What we have to get really good at is ensuring that we're returning our club from where it left off. So the objective on these 3 tee heights is 3 practice swings, clipping the very top of the tee head. So tee height 1, got the tee head, tee height 2. On each instance, you're going to address the very top of the tee head. So the highest one is probably 1.5 inches off the ground. The next one maybe 1/2 inch off the ground. Got the tee head, and then finally the arc height that we return to the tee head that's sitting in the ground. That tee didn't rocket out because it's being held firmly in the ground. But what I've just practiced is this arc height control that progressively I drop down a little bit lower. Now, interestingly enough, that tee height drill can be used to solve both fats. We're trying to lift our tee height or our arc height, and also thin. So if you think of, if you demonstrate an inability as you're doing that exercise to hit the top of the tee heights, then that tells you there's some factor in the swing that's producing the arc returning too high relative to what you're trying to hit. So 3 tee heights actually works for both. That's a little double benefit right there. Now, the last exercise in solving for fat contact, we've talked about controlling the depth, like lifting the depth of our arc and changing where we land it. But yet again, there's another drill that we can do, and it's called linked divots. So if we think back to landing the plane, We'll scratch the line again. This time, rather than making successive divots that start on the line, what we're going to do is we're going to make progressive divots further and further to your lead side. So we'll use one of these divots as the first divot, right? The divot starts at the start of the runway, and the end of the divot is some 4 inches to the left. I'm going to start at the start of the runway again, but this time my club's going to land at the front end of that next divot, just like so. I've made another divot, that's another 2 inches additional, so now I've got a 6-inch travel. I'm moving the arc dynamically further to my left. As you're doing this, your body is going to respond. It's going to be shifting to the left. Your handle is going to travel further such that you can move the landing location of the club further and further to the left, solving your fat contact. And lastly, that last divot starts all the way out at the end of that second divot. So you've linked 3 divots together, progressively moving the bottom of your arc. Now, so that's how we would solve for fat contact. Let's get into thin contact. Thin contact is an arc height that's just too high relative to the ground, or relative to the golf ball, and therefore the ground. Talked about 2 varieties of thin, just the lifted arc. We need to get the arc back to the ground. The 3T height drill will be helpful for that. Sometimes a person needs an assist on that. Generally what we see when a person's returning that arc height too high to the ground is their body has drifted away from the ground, so we'll call that a stand-up move, or their arms start relatively fully extended and they return bent or flexed. So they've drawn the handle up close to their body. You can see the impact that has on the bottom of the club. So we need the opposite effect, don't we? We need a feeling of the arms getting long. So a good exercise for this is we switch our hands on the club, go to a cross-handed grip, and we practice pushing the handle down as we're returning to impact. Then we put the hands back on as they would normally be, conventional grip. We want to feel the same thing through our left hand. We want to feel the same thing post-impact. Some shorter swings, feeling the extension come, post-impact, holding that position, seeing that you're extending your arms is going to cause you to drop that arc height down quite nicely. So that would be in conjunction with our 3T heights, dropping the arc height down, getting some extension, avoiding your body moving up and away from the ground. But what if you have that last variety of thin contact or top, and that's just getting too far ahead of it? Well, I've got my shadow on the ground, and that shadow is going to be a great assist here. What we're going to try and do is we're going to try and be observant in practice swings to our shadow not moving aggressively to our left side. So I'm now addressing the ground with the club, but I'm watching the top of my shadow, and I want to keep my shadow nice and centered. I can let myself look to the target. I'm not trying to hold my vision in the follow through on my shadow. I'm just concentrating my shadow, backswing and downswing, and then following through. It's going to give you an awareness of keeping your body nice and stable, but maybe it's a cloudy day, or maybe you need some level of additional effect. We're just going to put your golf bag right here. We're going to bring your driver out. We're going to have your driver sitting so it's in your peripheral view. So now I can see how much my head might be moving right or left, or in this case left if I'm solving for a late bottom, thin or top contact. And I just want to make sure that my head doesn't move relative to my driver head cover very much at all. It would be normal to expect that your head might move an inch further to the left during the downswing, but any more than that, and that might surface some of that low point, landing point that's too late. Now, equipped with the knowledge and drills needed to solve the most frustrating of contact errors, you can go to the range and work it out, and more importantly, take from the range the same feels and drills to the course to ensure you don't fall victim to bad contact, wrecking your round.